It really is incredible that we have services like Squarespace these days. The fact that almost anyone with basic computer skills can set up a reasonable looking website is just wonderful. Squarespace really does do so much so well. I moved to Squarespace about 18 months ago after years of hosting my own WordPress site and maintaining everything on the server for the simple reason of saving time. Relinquishing all that control was difficult to start with, but it works as well as I need it to. Today, I'm looking at a few of the things that have bugged me about Squarespace since day one and still do today. Firstly, Squarespace seemed to have a really biased online presence. A massive amount of Squarespace mentions online are either because of direct sponsorship or from those with an interest in promoting Squarespace. As Squarespace only sponsor videos on larger channels, they're the ones that turn up in your feed, so you seem to get this really kind of biased view of Squarespace, and you just don't seem to be able to get these properly objective reviews like the one I'm making here, because everything out there is just sponsored by Squarespace. Also, their support pages are incredibly well optimized, and what that means is that if you search for a particular topic, trying to sort of solve a problem on Squarespace or find out some new information, the first 2 pages on Google are just various iterations and versions of their support pages about possibly a vaguely related topic, but probably not what you were looking for. I'm not saying it's impossible to find information, it's just really quite difficult sometimes. The second point is more of a niggle than anything else. It's about post scheduling, and I could be wrong on this, so please do correct me if there's a better way of doing this. Post scheduling is done with a calendar and then a little slider to select the time that you want the post to go out. The calendar's fine, you just select the day, it's nice and easy. But the time, well, the slider doesn't always let you get an exact time. And funnily enough, there are times when I want a post to be published at exactly the same time as a video, let's say 2 p.m. Unfortunately, the slider will only let me do 1:59 or 2:02, which just seems an enormous oversight. It doesn't work properly. Why can't post scheduling be straightforward and simple, and you can just put a specific time, type a specific time in, but it just doesn't seem to be possible. Thirdly, social media integration. You can add Instagram to your website if you like, your Instagram feed, but don't count on it ever updating. Every time I've added mine, it's needed a manual refresh to bring in new posts. I contacted support about this and they said, oh yeah, you just need to remove the access on the Instagram side as well as removing the Squarespace block and re-adding it, which I did, and of course that worked once because it has to bring in the new information. But after that, it effectively did nothing. Twitter integration is better, but it is limited and it is really, really ugly on Squarespace. When I used a WordPress site, I used a plugin from a company called Smashballoon to do this job. It was absolutely amazing. It was beautiful to look at, really good to configure, and it worked 100% of the time. I really do miss my Smashballoon plugins. Number 4 is probably one of my biggest gripes with the Squarespace platform. You cannot copy an object. You can copy certain blocks and you can copy entire pages, but let's say you've got 4 buttons that are essentially the same except maybe for an incrementing number on each one. You cannot just copy them, you have to recreate and go through the laborious process of recreating each one of those buttons, adding in the link again, adding in the text for the button again, redoing the design choices for that particular button, whether it's left aligned, whether it's large, medium or small. You can't just copy an object. It is absolutely insane that this has not been fixed. Styles and color palettes are very fixed and structured things on Squarespace, and that's no bad thing. It's right for a website to only sort of be limited to a particular maybe triumvirate of colors to ensure that the website has a consistent look throughout. The problem is that short of moving into the world of CSS, which people probably won't be particularly familiar with or comfortable with for many users of Squarespace, I imagine, there's no way to make one item different than your standard palette. So, for example, let's say you want to put a link to your Patreon page on a post. You might choose to make that particular link Patreon's primary color rather than your own, just to make it stand out a bit. There's no simple way to do that in Squarespace. Hosting a file on Squarespace is virtually impossible. Even if you're paying for the premium package, hosting any kind of downloadable content is very clumsy to do, and even if you choose to do it, files have to be 20 megabytes or smaller. Yes, you heard me correctly, 20 megabytes. I mean, I fully understand that Squarespace do not want their platform to be a file repository, and the kind of bandwidth usage that those kind of sites would have is completely unpredictable and difficult to manage. But for all intents and purposes, if you want to host anything of any kind, you're going to have to find your own way and do it externally. Digital products, on the other hand, for e-commerce, can be up to 300 megabytes. An enormous 300 megabytes. I mean, wow. Just think of what you can do with 300 megabytes. It's like having the entire Google data center at your fingertips. It's such a gracious and generous amount that's nigh on useless to anybody wanting to host any kind of media or software content. Google Adsense is a bit awkward too. Google require you to place a file in the root of your website to allow you to correctly configure Adsense. And as I mentioned in the previous point, hosting files is horrible. And as far as I can tell, the links that it uses are kind of just symbolic links that redirect themselves. And basically Google doesn't see it. And there are various websites online saying this is the way you solve it and this is the way you go about fixing it. I've tried them all. It doesn't work. I had to host the file myself on a completely separate domain with a 301 redirect to a particular location. That solved the problem, and it is effectively removing Squarespace from the equation altogether. The music player is a mess. We've already discussed file hosting, so there's no way that Squarespace are going to let you upload any kind of FLAC or WAV content. You're stuck with MP3 and M4A files, I'm afraid, unless you host your own, of course. Then there's the players themselves. I mean, what a load of crap. You have a choice between, I think, something called Compact and something called Classic. These really should be named Ultra Basic and Complete Garbage. There is such potential here for Squarespace to enhance this and capture kind of bands and music lovers. But again, as with everything on Squarespace, you'll really just need to embed code from an external service like SoundCloud or something to do anything interesting here. Yet more money. Add-ons or enhancements just seem a little bit uninspiring and overpriced. Coming from a world of WordPress and manually administering my own site and server, the options and world to go beyond what you get in the box seems rather limited. There are certainly ways to inject code to your pages and add scripts that wouldn't otherwise run, but I've really had limited success. The last one I tried was a live chat solution, and while the live chat worked great, I found out fairly soon that it had broken something else on my site, and that's much less straightforward to fix on Squarespace, at least it is for me. If you go and search for a commercial add-on, there's little choice and everything is way too expensive for what they are. It's like as if the developers of these bad boys are like, they clearly know that they've got you by the balls if you've landed on their page and they're like, oh, another sucker who can't do what they want with the limited functionality of Squarespace. Let's bleed them dry. Anyway, compared to my previous solution, Squarespace saves me both time and money. Doing precisely what I want with it is much, much more difficult, sometimes impossible, but with workarounds and a few sacrifices, it easily does as much as I need. I have no plans to move from Squarespace, and I would wholeheartedly recommend it to you. I have no discount code to offer, and I have no affiliation with Squarespace whatsoever. These are just a few of my thoughts on the service after 18 months of use. Check out the TDCat.com website if you want to have a look at the site I built in Squarespace, and do let me know if you've got any questions at all, any comments, and of course, if I've made any errors. Many thanks for watching. I'll see you soon. Coming from a world of WordPress and manually administering my own site and server, the options and the world to go outside of the... God! The options to go outside of the box of what you... Oh, God. Add-ons and enhancement. Coming from a world of and finally, add-ons